Hey everyone, it's Steaky here. Real quick, I just wanted to touch on some points before we get into the video. First of all, thank you so much for all the engagement on that first video. Uh, all the likes, the comments, the subscribes, the views. I honestly hadn't expected to get that much positive reception for that. At most, I was expecting about like 50 to 100 views, but this has gone well beyond what I had imagined. So thank you so much for all your support. I really appreciate it. I'm so happy. Every single comment I get, it puts a smile on my face. Every subscriber, it puts a smile on my face. I'm just so happy that all of you like the video as well. Second of all, please head over to the original author's profiles. Please. Head over to WitchofWriting's profiles, her AO3, her Wattpad, her Quotev, her Tumblr. That's all going to be in the description down below. Let her know that you are enjoying the story, because she deserves all the praise. Without her, this project would not be going on. So thank her for all her hard work. Thirdly, I am hoping to upload every Friday. It might not be possible next week, as somebody will be in the house constantly, so I won't have much time to record by myself, and I don't really like recording with other people in the house. But other than that, I will aim for every Friday uploads. Yeah, so you guys aren't always asking like, oh, when's the next one? So Friday is the day I'm aiming to upload a new chapter every week. And lastly, I have a Twitter. I don't really know if anybody's interested in that, but if you wanted to chat some more, if you wanted to private message me, my Twitter is there for you guys. I will leave it in the link as well. In the description, my bad. So you guys can chat. I will basically be posting updates on how the edits are going and where I'm at in like recording the chapter, if you guys are interested in any of that. And I'm working on like some more fan art, so I will probably post up my works in progress there. So if you guys are interested, you can go ahead and follow. It's not really necessary, I don't honestly care, but yeah. So once again, guys, overall, thank you so much. I really appreciate it, and enjoy the second chapter. The sound of your alarm was achingly loud as you groaned against the pillow. Your dreams were odd and muddled, visions unclear against shifting colors and sounds. You grabbed the phone off your side table and looked at the time before quieting the sound and laying back down for a moment, the thought of going to work keeping you firmly in bed. You sat straight up as a thought struck you, and your eyes shifted towards your closed bedroom door, nerves tensing in your chest. Yesterday couldn't have all been a dream. So, moving as quietly as you could with your feet padding softly against the floor, you shakily reached forward, unlocked the door, and twisted the knob until the door opened. You bit down on your lower lip, unsure of what you might find as you approached the couch from the back. Taking a deep breath, you looked over the edge and struggled not to drop your phone. There he slept, a wild tuft of pale blonde hair leaned up against the armrest of your couch. His face was beautifully soft, but tense, as though his dreams, if he had any, were angrier than your own. He just barely fit on the length of the couch, one foot propped up on the other armrest, while the other leg draped off the cushion and onto the floor, along with half the blanket you'd given him. You didn't dare move closer and risk waking him up despite the strong urge to run your fingers through his soft-looking hair. He'd definitely blow your hand off for that one. So instead, you took one last glance at the sleeping man before you moved back into your room and grabbed your work clothes for the day. Bakugou was still here, in your apartment, sleeping on your couch. He was going to be thoroughly pissed when he woke up from the realization that he hadn't returned home. But this meant you had one more day to learn more about him. Oh, wish I didn't have to go to work, you said under your breath, while picking out clothes to take to the bathroom. Normally, you just come out and change in here, but walking around in just a towel seemed like an embarrassingly bad idea under the current circumstance. Sneaking out of the bedroom once more, You tiptoed to the bathroom while glancing at the sleeping man on your couch, before locking the door behind you. While you let the hot water wake you up at this early hour, you reached for your soap, only to see the items you bought Bakugou yesterday. They looked used, meaning he must have taken a shower at some point after you fell asleep. The thought of him using your shower and standing where you currently stood sent blood rushing to your face. "Oh God, no, don't think of that, just focus on getting through today," you told yourself while quickly finishing up your shower before hopping out. Your work attire was usually business casual, and you weren't in a position to deal with clients directly, so you tried to keep things simple but professional. Slacks and a conservative top with a bit of makeup to help you look properly awake. A few months ago, some asshole coworker asked you if you were sick when you didn't have time to put on concealer, hinting that women without makeup, or you specifically, looked ill. It was completely sexist and pissed you off for the entire day, but you weren't dumb enough to notice how some men in higher positions had a tendency to retain the jobs of women at your work who put a bit more effort into their appearance than others. Of course, you wanted to be noticed for your work ethic and creative ideas, but sometimes that just wasn't enough. "Thanks, misogynistic workplace culture," you mumbled, while trying not to get mascara in your eye. It wasn't even that you disliked dressing nicely or wearing makeup, but the idea of putting on a presentation to be taken seriously made your blood boil more often than you'd openly admit. After giving yourself a once-over in the mirror, you grabbed your pajamas to take back into your room and slowly opened the bathroom door. Somehow, after all that, Bakugou was still asleep on the couch, though it looked like he'd shifted a bit so his back was now to you. It felt very odd to stealthily maneuver around your own apartment when normally it didn't matter, but after yesterday, you both were probably mentally exhausted, so you continued to let him sleep as you dropped your pajamas in the hamper before sliding into the kitchen to make a quick breakfast. Apparently, the smell of food turned out to be the instigator in waking up Sleeping Beauty. You were plating your own portion when you heard a groan behind you. Turning around, you saw Bakugou sit up with a sleepy expression before looking around the room, his face growing more and more agitated until it landed squarely on you. You quickly turned back around, the idea of him staring daggers at the back of your head more appealing than seeing him angry with your own eyes. He yelled something in Japanese which made you flinch, his frustration at still being here very obvious. At least none of this was your fault. You didn't have a quirk, and you had no way to control any of this, so hopefully he could at least not direct his anger at you. Rather than walk straight into the kitchen, you heard Bakugou pad heavily across the floor and slam the bathroom door shut. "Please, just don't be difficult today," you sighed while plating the second serving. You cooked enough for him just in case he woke up while also thinking about how to make things a bit easier on him. Even though a lot of this fell on you, complaining seemed useless because you were the one who offered to let him stay here in the first place. What the hell did I get myself into? Before sitting down to eat, you grabbed the pizza box from the fridge and slid a couple of remaining slices into a container for lunch. You heard the bathroom door open as a more awake but no less angry-looking Bakugou walked over, crossed his arms, and stared you down at the kitchen table. Despite accomplishing the "be scared of me" look, you couldn't help but admire his handsome features. He watched you open up the app on your phone before speaking. "Well?" he asked. You just furrowed your brows in response. "Well, what? Also, good morning?" "I'm still here is what? The fuck am I supposed to do?" It felt as though he expected you to drop the answers to his predicament into his sweaty hands, despite having no more information now than you did yesterday. "Well, don't yell at me about it. You obviously know more about quirks than I do, so don't look to me for answers," you said in response while attempting to meet his glare right back. "I made some breakfast if you're hungry. I have to go to work soon, so I can't stick around today. You'll have to entertain yourself." He looked between you and the plate of food before walking over to take an angry bite of toast. "At least you get to work," he said between bites. "I bet villains are having a fucking ball with my absence. Assholes. Can't wait to get my hands on whoever thought they could get rid of me." Maybe he just needed to vent, so rather than interrupt, you just let him keep talking while you ate and your phone did the translating work. "I thought of something last night. What if all this is some illusion? What if I'm not really in another universe or whatever, and all this shit is in my head and my body is asleep? In that case, I just have to figure out how to wake up." Now this was a new idea, one that actually made you turn around and stare at him. It was ironic how he considered the possibility that this place wasn't real, when in reality, his own universe was just a made-up fantasy to you and everyone else. Are you suggesting I'm not real? Bakugou just shrugged.
Maybe. You are pretty weird.
Your offended expression must have been amusing since he reacted with a smirk. You took a deep breath to calm yourself before sassing the man who could easily explode your entire kitchen into smithereens. It's too early to be insulted, and I'm not gonna go through my whole backstory to explain why I'm definitely a real person. You have the whole day to think up theories while I'm at work, you said, while standing up to wash your dishes in the sink.
What the hell am I supposed to do all day?
Bakugou asked.
Your world is boring.
Didn't you say yesterday you didn't need a babysitter? You spat back. Figure it out. Just, please don't blow up anything. Move. For once, he did as you said and stepped aside while you pulled open a drawer and took out several items. A pen, a pad of paper, and the spare apartment key. You were in no mood this early in the morning to put up with his attitude or bullshit, no matter how cute he was. Here's my cell number in case you get arrested or something. This is my only spare key to the apartment. Please don't lose it and just lock up if you leave. Do me a courtesy and write a note if you do go anywhere. Bakugou stood oddly still as you rambled off instructions. Maybe he expected to just walk all over you, or that he could shove you around because you didn't have a quirk of your own, and he was usually the one in charge. But you were no pushover, and if there was one solid thing about Bakugou you knew from the manga, it was that he respected people who were strong. You might not be physically strong, but there was no way you were going to stand by and let him do or say whatever he wanted. It was possible that the same thought crossed his mind because his mouth formed a tight line once he finished talking.
You act as though I'm some stupid criminal that'll get tossed in jail. Don't order me around.
He growled out while you grabbed your bag and slid on your shoes.
Hey, I'm talking to you.
Ignoring him seemed to piss him off, but if you didn't leave now, you'd risk being late. You grabbed the container of pizza before standing in the open doorway and turning around, and staring right into those pretty red eyes of his, phone in hand. I'll be back around 7. I'm sorry you're still stuck here, I really am, but I have my own responsibilities to take care of. Also, you're welcome for breakfast. With that, you shut the door and locked it behind you while leaving Bakugou's incoherent yelling behind as you walked down the hallway to start what you knew would be a very long day. After you left, Bakugou stared at the closed door before slamming his fist down on the counter, nearly knocking over the plate of breakfast food in the process. He'd dealt with numerous shitty situations, and he always managed to find a way out. The main difference now was that he truly was alone in this. No hero agency to contact, no friends to call, no one to count on besides himself when, after many years of being a selfish asshole, he finally learned to lean on others. He didn't have to fight every battle alone anymore. Hell, this place might not even be real, an illusion, but he had no clue how to test that theory. He couldn't even use his quirk here without people freaking out. Smoke issued from his strained fist, wafting upwards until a blaring alarm sounded in his ears.
The fuck?
He yelled, before looking up and seeing the fire alarm above the stove. Reaching up, he pressed the button to shut the damn thing off before he blew it up. The ones here must be far more sensitive to smoke than the alarms in his own apartment, since he'd never set them off even once. The other problem that made his head spin, besides figuring out what the hell to do about the situation, was you. What connection did you have to all this? Was this location completely random? Or did the villain have another agenda? Were you hiding more than you let on? Bakugou asked himself these questions while scanning around the apartment that had become his temporary shelter. A TV sat against the wall opposite the front door, with a short shelf filled with various games and consoles supporting its weight. The couch made a pretty shitty bed if he was honest, but Bakugou told himself it was better than sleeping outside or on the floor. That brought up yet another question. Why the hell were you being so nice to him? A total stranger with superpowers. Were you secretly afraid of what he might do if you attempted to kick him out? The idea stung a bit, honestly. He was a hero, and a damn good one at that. Although others were still far better at dealing with civilians than himself, Bakugou had improved his self-image and attempted to only scare villains and assholes, who deserved to face his rage. Even with his suspicions and no plans to let his guard down here, you still gave him a place to stay and bought him food. He was an asshole, but even he could show a bit of appreciation when it felt warranted. Glancing up at the microwave on the counter, he groaned. It was only 9 in the morning, meaning he had nothing to keep him busy for the 10 hours he was stuck here alone. After dumping his plate in the sink, Bakugou grabbed the pad of paper and pen you'd left on the counter before sitting down on your couch to think. While Bakugou seethed inside your apartment, you dragged your feet on the way to work, as your mind reeled with thoughts on the events of the past 24 hours. Bakugou was still stuck here, and it was obvious he didn't trust that you were completely innocent in all this. Why would he? Trusting didn't exactly seem like a well-used word in his vocabulary. Well, if he really is stuck here for a while, then he should curb the attitude. It's not my fault. Just trying to help. You mumbled to yourself, nearly bumping into someone else on the sidewalk in the process. Cars and buses trudged along on the traffic-burgeoned roads, your pace nearly the same as theirs. It was one of the main reasons you usually walked to work. Besides enjoying some fresh air and mild exercise, your road rage wouldn't do well every single morning, especially not when dealing with drivers who looked at their phone screens more often than they watched the road. Before long, you stood outside your bland office building and took a deep breath before you opened the door and stepped inside. You could already tell today was going to be very long. After putting your leftover pizza up in the fridge and pouring yourself a cup of cheap, bitter coffee in the communal kitchen, you turned around to see a coworker you found particularly annoying blocking your way. "Morning," she said with an oddly sly grin. Your eye twitched. "Morning," you replied, while stepping around the older woman to see a box of donuts perched on the counter. The box was, unfortunately, empty, with only a few crumbs left. Damn it. Your coworker hummed and followed you towards your cubicle. Her disgustingly chipper attitude this particular morning made your teeth grind. "So, you were out yesterday. Everything all right?" she asked. Pausing, you wondered if she would pester you with questions that weren't any of her business. "Perfectly fine. Just had some things to take care of." "You mean like grocery shopping?" she asked, her voice rising in curiosity with every word. The coffee in your hand nearly slipped out at her question. What?" Her eyes narrowed at your reaction. "Yesterday, I stopped by the store after picking up my kids from school and saw someone who definitely looked like you, but you weren't alone. Who was that delicious-looking man with you?" she asked without a hint of shame. Yeah, delicious-looking described Bakugou all right, but coming from her mouth, it felt tainted. "Aren't you married?" you shot back. She just shrugged. "I'm allowed to look but not touch. Anyway," she continued, "who was he? Was that your emergency?" Your ears burned as you quickly thought up a lie to make her go away. He's here, visiting, from out of town. It was a very sudden trip, needed someone to show him around. That's all." Your fingers clicked and clacked over the keyboard to hopefully indicate that you were done with this conversation. That's so," she muttered to herself, obviously skeptical of your explanation. "Well, better get to work." When she finally walked away, you gagged at her gross infatuation. Bakugou was out of the league of literally everyone in this building anyway. Probably even most of the people in town, yourself included. The people here were generally average and boring. They slogged through the tedium of balancing work and personal time, like a server carrying trays in both hands while dodging running toddlers. You had a routine, but even with Bakugou here, you couldn't just skip work to deal with him. There were times you wished something exciting would happen, that adventure would drop in your lap. But now that an anime character flopped into your life like a fish out of water, you weren't so sure about that notion anymore. The first half of the workday slid along quicker than you anticipated because of the pile of leftover work from yesterday, in addition to everything needed for today. If you were busy, then you couldn't daydream about whatever mischief Bakugou was undoubtedly up to. "I swear, if I get back and there's a hole in my couch..." The chat icon at the bottom of your screen lit up. Opening it, you saw it was from one of the few coworkers you got along with. You were in different departments, so aside from occasionally grabbing lunch together, You used the internal chat system to keep in touch. She'd sent a picture of a new Bakugou figurine that just released. Your mouth went dry. "Isn't this from that anime you like? That angry gremlin?" she typed out. This moment caused the feeling of surreal paranoia from yesterday to surge back into the pit of your belly. The character on your screen literally slept on your couch last night. What the fuck? You typed out a quick response before getting back to work, eager to distract yourself from extraordinary thoughts. By the time lunch rolled around, you were starving. One of the few microwaves smelled like rancid popcorn, but you powered through the stench to heat up your leftover pizza. Since the weather was nice, you sat outside in an open balcony area while scrolling through social media. "I wonder what he's doing now," you wondered, eyes scanning the scenery on the street below as cars drove by and fat birds chirped. As you ate leftover pizza at work, multiple pieces of paper lay scattered across the kitchen table. Bakugou's foot tapping rapidly on the floor of your apartment. Notes upon notes of ideas, theories, and rambling thoughts were scribbled down in a way that only made sense to him. Desperate for any type of answer on how to get home, Bakugou wrote down anything that came to mind: the villain's motive, whether or not this place was real or an illusion conjured in his head, why he wasn't in Japan, etc.
Fuck. If this is an illusion, then the asshole villain would need to know this language and culture and somehow implant all that information. Or make it very damn realistic.
Red eyes darted to his forearm before they fluttered closed. He wondered earlier if an injury might jolt him back to his own reality, so he used his quirk on himself. Despite knowing the ins and outs of his quirk and understanding his own destructive power, the light burn marks on his skin were evidence of the pain. It was nothing compared to the permanent scars from past fights that littered his body, though.
The point is to get rid of me, right? Or make me go crazy trying to figure this shit out,
he mumbled aloud. Bakugou picked up the paper detailing what he remembered doing yesterday morning before all this happened, and read it over for the sake of clarity. It was a rare day off for him, and despite wanting to take a well-deserved respite, Bakugou hated the idea of lounging around and doing nothing. After waking up and dressing, he decided to head out of his apartment building to a corner store a block away. He actually liked cooking, but even Bakugou admitted that the store owner made a pretty good miso soup. The building housed multiple pro heroes, so security was extremely tight. Bakugou rarely locked his door if he knew he wouldn't be gone long. Anyone stupid enough to rob him, of all people, would get their faces blown in. He grabbed his wallet, phone, and sunglasses and pulled up the hood on his jacket before heading out. He hated the paparazzi and their predatory tactics in getting pictures and forcing interviews whenever they felt like it, so whenever he went out and wanted to be left alone, Bakugou dressed inconspicuously to avoid notice. Always on the lookout for the flash of a camera, obsessed fans, or the possibility of a surprise villain attack, he rarely let his guard down. In all honesty, it was exhausting to avoid feeling relaxed unless he was at home or out during a rare night with friends.
Just one price of being a hero,
he mused silently. Bakugou ordered the usual from the corner cafe. The owner knew him at this point and did Bakugou a courtesy to never point out who he was to customers so he could eat in peace. He scrolled through his phone with a mouthful of food to see posts from his coworkers, scoffing at how open they were with their personal lives. Kirishima remained the social butterfly he was at UA. He took the time to sign merch and take pictures with fans, as well as share photos of himself at the gym or training. During an interview, a reporter asked why he was so open about his life online.
"Well," he said, "heroes are still people. We have lives outside of kicking butt and saving everyone, right? And I think it's important that everyone understands that sometimes we can chill out and have fun like everyone else." What a sap,
Bakugou mumbled. Even though his agent urged him to be more active online as a pro hero, he enjoyed his privacy. No one needed to see his flaws or vulnerabilities, or what he ate for breakfast that day, just that he was a strong and capable top hero. Once he was finished eating, Bakugou stepped outside to take in the nice weather for a brief moment before heading back towards his apartment building. While checking his wallet to see how much cash he had, Kaminari somehow convinced him to go out drinking tonight with a couple of others. His phone rang. That small distraction was all it took for a silent someone to come up behind him, place their hand on his shoulder, and squeeze until all that remained of him on the sidewalk was an open wallet,
cracked phone and scratched sunglasses.
Fuck!
Bakugou yelled on the couch as the memory ended.
Routine. They knew where I liked to go and at what time. Must have been watching me. Can't believe I was so stupid. Let my guard down for 1 second. Damn it!
At times like this, he would normally go out and train, destroy something at the gym before paying to replace it, or bug Kirishima to be a punching bag with his hardening quirk. Now, none of those options existed, but just sitting here like an idiot made him feel useless.
Think. Shit. What if the asshole is here with me somewhere, keeping watch?
Leaving the papers scattered on the couch, Bakugou stood up and scanned the room.
Oi! If any fuckers are here, you must have a death wish since you won't live through it if I catch you.
He yelled into the empty room, while vague paranoia seeped down his spine. With a low growl, Bakugou walked over to the counter and stuffed the spare key you'd left him this morning into his pocket. He needed to get out, to know what was around him, to find anyone suspicious in the area despite having no clue what the damn villain even looked like. Being in this small apartment started to feel claustrophobic anyway. His hand hit the doorknob before he remembered what you said this morning.
Nagging me to do shit like the old hag.
Turning around, he snatched up the pad of paper and wrote down the quickest possible note before closing the door with a slam.
Went out.
It read in messy Japanese. Back at your office, you wondered what your new, temporary roommate was getting himself into before your coworker decided to gossip to other coworkers about the mystery grocery store man.
Can people mind their own business? We have a deadline next week.
You mumbled, while popping some candy into your mouth. You kept a small stash behind your monitor so people wouldn't dig their nasty fingers into a communal bowl.
Where did you meet him? Grocery store is a weird place for a date, but I won't judge. If it doesn't work out, give him my number.
They didn't even know him, but the passing comments on your personal life made you wish the fire alarm would sound off so everyone could leave for the day. Most of the people in your office were older and didn't know when to drop a subject, or couldn't take the hint that you weren't going to let any incriminating info slide. You assumed most of them weren't familiar enough with anime to know who Bakugou was, but it wasn't a risk you were willing to take if you wanted to keep up the charade of secrecy. As the afternoon wore on, you wondered what you'd do if he was stuck here for a while. As in, long enough to wonder how you'd possibly keep him entertained if Bakugou couldn't get himself home. Your world was, just as he'd stated this morning, far less interesting than his own. Last night seemed like a small success with playing video games, so rather than letting him stew in his own frustration and anger at having no control over the situation, maybe you could at least try and get him to have fun. What would Bakugou Katsuki find fun, though? Besides beating up villains, anyway. Maybe you were thinking too far ahead. He could disappear tomorrow, for all you knew. But what if he didn't? What if you woke up tomorrow morning to find him asleep on your couch again? I'm really glad I don't have a roommate, because I have no idea how I'd explain this shit. By the time 6:30 rolled around, you were equal parts anxious and eager. Relaxing at home after work was normally a calming experience, but the possibility of coming home to an unknown scene made you groan. At least tomorrow's Friday, but what the hell am I gonna do about the weekend if he's still here? You wondered, while walking out the door and down the street towards your apartment building. And won't he need, more stuff? He seemed like a hygienic guy with how he brushed his teeth in the anime, so I don't think he'd be okay with wearing one set of clothes day after day, and I definitely don't have anything that would fit him. He better not run up my water bill by washing his stuff every day. The thought of dealing with an outrageous bill at the end of the month made your feet move just a bit faster towards home. You stood in front of your apartment door and took a deep breath. You can do this. If he has an attitude, I can deal with it without staring. He's just a guy who, shouldn't really exist, but he does. And he's hot. I'm a disaster, you mumbled, while sliding the key into the lock and pushing it open slowly. Hello? You called out. No one answered. The apartment seemed empty, but you walked around to make sure there were no more unexpected visitors.
including under your bed where the long, blank pillowcase still sat. Nothing seemed out of place and nothing looked burnt, luckily. You did see the disorganized pieces of paper lying on the couch cushion. The writing was all in Japanese, so you couldn't read any of it. Did he pick up on Midoriya's note-taking habit? You wondered aloud. Disturbing them seemed like a bad idea, so you just gathered them together and left them on the couch. Okay, so where is he then? Walking over towards the fridge, you noticed another piece of paper on the counter, this one scrawled with some messy-looking writing. Did he really leave a note like I asked him to? Surprising, honestly. You took out your phone and poised it above the note to take a picture for the app. Unfortunately, Bakugou's handwriting prevented any recognizable translation. Seriously? It's not even legible? Well, he's an adult and emphasized he didn't need a babysitter, so if he went out and got lost, it's not on me. Your normal routine consisted of changing out of your work clothes and into something more comfortable as soon as you got home, and you weren't about to adjust that detail. A baggy t-shirt and soft pajama pants felt much better than your work clothes. Afterwards, you noticed a few things in your TV stand that desperately needed to be hidden. Season 1, Season 2, that's it. I have a couple of manga volumes in my room. Better hide those too. You grabbed up the box sets of My Hero Academia and buried them under some dirty clothes in your closet, along with the manga volumes you owned. If you found these, you'd probably have some kind of breakdown or freak out. Best to hide any evidence he might find snooping around while I'm at work. Afterwards, you stretched out and walked around the apartment to make sure there was nothing else Bakugou might find. He was probably too preoccupied today with being pissed off at his situation and writing those notes you found earlier. Lucky you. It's almost 8. Should I go look for him? He can't read the street signs, so what if he really is lost? The idea of Bakugou having to spend the night outside because he couldn't find his way back made you frown. You grabbed a cookie out of the cabinet while wondering whether to go ahead and start dinner or walk around in the dark looking for Bakugou when the sound of the door lock clicking caught your attention. Bakugou opened the door with more force than was probably necessary due to his bad mood, but stopped short when he realized he wasn't walking into the empty apartment he'd left that afternoon. You stood there, with some kind of deer-in-headlights look, and a cookie in your mouth as he stepped inside and let the door close behind him. All he wanted to do was get back and stew in his own frustrations at having no more information now than he did earlier. He'd gone out searching for something, anything, anyone who looked mildly suspicious, but came up empty-handed. The people here were painfully mediocre and completely quirkless, but he wasn't at home where he could shut himself out from the world or blow up something easily replaceable. No, he had to deal with some temporary roommate, well, technically he was the roommate, and act civil enough to keep your shitty couch for what he really fucking hoped was one more night. Bakugou watched you finish the cookie with surprising vigor while you took out your phone to translate. Hi. Where have you been? Did you get lost? You asked, making his eye twitch.
Huh? Why is that any of your damn business? And no, I wasn't lost.
He answered, while tossing the spare key you let him borrow onto the counter. When he got back home, he wouldn't need it. Just curious, no need to get an attitude. I saw your note, but I couldn't read it. Crimson eyes scanned the paper in your hand. He rarely got headaches, but Bakugou swore he felt one edging up behind his eyes.
What do you mean you couldn't read it? Is the technology here that shitty and outdated?
He demanded, referring to whatever application you used to make communication possible. Your mouth thinned, but he was in no mood to care about pleasantries. No, your handwriting is the shitty thing. Even Google didn't know what it said. At that bold accusation, he rounded on you, nostrils flared. His handwriting was perfectly fucking fine.
The hell did you say?
You looked startled by his reaction, but didn't back away. Stubborn. I said, your handwriting is messy. Even without activating his quirk, Bakugou swore he smelled smoke.
I didn't even consider the possibility that I was dragged here to you specifically in order to piss me off.
He growled out while pointing an accusatory finger. The bickering went back and forth, volume rising on both ends as both you and Bakugou turned an argument about legible handwriting into a yell-fest. You knew he was obviously still upset at being stuck here, and you didn't plan on insulting him as soon as he walked in the door, but the workday was long and you were tired and hungry, and him being angry just fed into your own frustrations. Well, I was going to be nice and offer to take you shopping tonight, but toss that idea out the window, you barked out while wildly gesturing towards an actual window at the other end of the room. Bakugou looked confused, in addition to exasperated when the phone translated your words.
Shopping? Why the hell would I want to go fucking shopping?
He replied, with arms wide while staring at you. You took a deep breath in an attempt to calm down, but it did little good. I know, you don't want to consider the worst-case scenario of being trapped here more than a few days, but I figured you were tired of wearing the same clothes 2 days in a row. Nothing I have will fit you, so I was going to ask if you wanted some clothes to last you just in case. You blurted all that out before sliding to the floor with your back against the cool metal of the fridge, the palms of your hands rubbing circles into your eyes. Yesterday was exhausting, and today was no better, but you had to wake up for work and deal with annoying coworkers, only to come home to Bakugou Katsuki yelling at you. Sure, maybe you could have been a bit nicer about his note, but he had no reason to display bitterness towards you directly. Expecting some kind of outburst, you were surprised when your words were met with silence. You looked up to see Bakugou staring down at you with an open mouth and furrowed brows. He was already taller than you, but from your position on the floor, he stood as a broad tower of a man. If you didn't know he was truly a good person from the manga, you would surely be more intimidated.
Your priorities are absurd, you know that? Why do you even care what I might want or need?
He asked, a hand running through his ash-blonde hair. There was one glaring reason to his question that you would never admit aloud. You wanted to get along with him. Having the real-life version of Bakugou Katsuki in your apartment was like an absurd dream that you hadn't woken up from yet, and honestly, you wanted him to like you. You wanted to be friendly with him. You didn't want him to hate his time here, as involuntary as it was. But you couldn't say any of that. It would be far too revealing of what you knew of him and his world, and would place you in a glaringly vulnerable light. Instead, you thought of a saying you read in passing once. Tell the truth, but tell it slant. You glanced away, toes curling against the cold tiles of the kitchen floor, his perceptive gaze like a beacon trained on a target. I'm just trying to be nice, I guess. You don't want to be here, don't belong here. But if I can make things easier, then I'll try. You said with a shrug, projecting a bit to make sure the phone in your hand picked up everything, despite how small you felt admitting just that much. Bakugou stared down at you, sitting almost pitifully on the floor after you gave him that answer. He'd been so damn suspicious of you since yesterday morning, suspicious that you had something to do with his agitating predicament, that you held some kind of clue to help him get back home. Hell, he even considered the possibility that you might be working with the villain in some way. But you'd have tried to get rid of him by now, right? Bakugou knew true fear. He'd both felt it himself and seen it displayed in the eyes of the people he saved every day. People in danger. Your freaked out reactions yesterday weren't fabricated. Yet, here you were, offering up food and shelter and other shit for him through some bizarre altruistic urge to be nice. He hated feeling pitied by other people, but he could at least recognize when it would be stupid to reject help. When he was younger, he would have scoffed at the idea, but with age came wisdom and a bit more experience on how to swallow his pride on the rarest of occasions. He wouldn't let his guard down completely, of course, but today had been long and he didn't want to fall asleep pissed off. One shitty night's sleep was enough.
Are you serious?
He asked, catching your attention as you looked up at him.
What do you get out of being nice to me?
That question must have snapped you out of feeling timid. You're a hero, right? You save people? What do you get out of helping people you don't even know? You knew how to throw his own words back in his face. It annoyed him.
Don't interrogate me.
Why I choose hero work is none of your business, he answered as you finally stood up from the floor and brushed yourself off. Well, let's go since you're so damn insistent. He watched your brows furrow in confusion. Go where? Didn't you just fucking offer to take me to the store? Wearing the same clothes 3 days in a row is disgusting, he admitted. Honestly, it was. He couldn't remember the last time outside of a mission in his hero costume that he'd spent more than a day and a half in the same clothes, and that was only when Kirishima dragged him to a bar and got him fucked up on some drink they named after him when he saved the owner from a villain. Best case scenario, he'd wake up back home. Worst case, he'd wake up here if you didn't try and stab him in his sleep. In the middle of those two options sat wearing the same pair of underwear for 3 days. If you offered to mitigate that last one, he'd take it. Really? You want to go now? Bakugou gave you a look that revealed his obvious answer. Okay. Just let me change and we can go. As soon as we get back, I'm ordering takeout because fuck cooking, I'm tired, and today's been long. You scooted around him to slip into your room and close the door before you took a deep breath. Oh, I'm surprised you went along with it, you mumbled, while changing into some jeans and a casual shirt. All you had to do was drive to the store, let him pick out what he needed, and come back. Grocery shopping wasn't nearly the painful experience you expected it to be, so maybe this wouldn't be so bad. After changing, you walked out of your room to see Bakugou reading through the pile of notes you'd organized earlier. He looked up towards you, his eyes analytical. Without a word, you grabbed up your purse and keys and headed for the door, with Bakugou silently trailing behind. There seemed to be an understanding between the two of you to get this chore done and come back, hopefully, without any drama. He didn't put up as much of an attitude when getting into the car this time. If there was still daylight, you could probably just walk since it wasn't very far, but you were tired, starving, and it was pitch black outside, so screw that idea. You knew where you were going, but set your phone up in the stand and turned on the translator. Sorry, I insulted your handwriting. Our technology might not be as advanced as yours, and today's been long. Bakugou probably didn't want to hear about your annoying coworkers, so you left out the details. You have enough to deal with, so I don't want to argue about dumb stuff. He sat silently in the back seat of your car, ruby eyes glistening as streetlights passed through the side windows. Whatever, was all he gave as a reply. Bakugou didn't want your pity, but you were doing him a handful of unnecessary favors for his benefit, so he kept the quips to a minimum. The late hour meant that the store and parking lot were mostly empty. Bakugou was grateful for that detail because he really did not want to deal with or interact with more people than necessary. You were already an itch under his skin. Bakugou analyzed the interior of the store as the two of you walked around. Just like the grocery store, it seemed normal enough. Nothing suspicious that might signal a crack in an illusion. The fluorescent lights in the ceiling were just as annoying here as they were back in Japan. The cart still had that one annoying squeaky wheel that made his eye twitch. There was always at least one screaming kid who possessed the lung capacity to echo throughout half the store. When fans became more of a nuisance with his growing popularity, Bakugou defaulted to just ordering things online. His busy hero schedule and unpredictable hours also meant shopping took away from the little free time he savored. Of course, he loved being a hero, he loved winning, and he loved kicking villain ass. But it was exhausting in all honesty, and breaks were rare. No one knew him here. He was a stranger, a normal citizen, anonymous. The thought settled strangely in the back of his mind, and mixed with the annoyance of still having no answers to his current situation. Okay, he heard you say in front of him while turning around, phone in hand to translate. I figure pick out, whatever you need to last you 3 or 4 days? I have a washer and a dryer too, so that's not an issue. If you're gone before then, clothes are easier to return than food. He stared at you with a blank expression before turning to his left to see the men's department. The styles here weren't what he was used to, which agitated him. Growing up with parents in fashion and advertising made him picky, but he was in no position to be overly demanding. And just don't pick out something too expensive, please. As you can probably tell, I'm not exactly rich, but I do all right. This was all so domestic.
The past 2 days wore him down mentally, anger and confusion bubbling up into no obtainable solutions to being stuck here. He was preparing to stay here in the event he couldn't go back soon, buying food, clothes, toiletries. The brief idea of blowing up this entire building in a massive blast flickered into his mind. In addition to wanting to let loose his quirk that he'd been unable to use openly for 2 days, creating chaos might dispel the illusion. But if this wasn't in his head, if he was really in another world, then arson was out of the question. Hello? Your hand waving in front of his face brought him out of the mental image of burning carts and smoldering TVs. Did you hear me?
Yeah. This won't take long,
he answered with a frown. You looked a mix of concerned and tired, but whatever sat in that weird head of yours wasn't any of his business. All right then, I'll just be wandering around. Come find me when you're done, you said, before turning around and heading down the wide store aisle, footsteps padding on the cold tile. At least you left him alone to do this, a small detail he appreciated. After leaving Bakugou behind, you appreciated the simple fact that the store was mostly empty. Dealing with a crowd would surely give you a headache after the past 2 days. Without thinking too much about it, you wandered into the candle aisle, scents filling your nose as you stood in front of various glass jars filled with multicolored wax dripping with artificial smells. Ocean breeze, clean linen, fresh garden, forest path, all of them vague yet accurate as you picked one up and sniffed. The candles in your apartment were nearly burned down to the bottom, so you needed a new one anyway. After the past couple of days, I might need something to help me calm down. Bakugou might need it more, though. Wonder if he likes candles, and what kinds of smells he likes. You enjoyed different kinds of scents depending on your mood and the time of year. Fresh-cut flowers and dewy grass in the spring and summer always made your apartment feel a little less dusty. Ages ago, you attempted to keep a plant alive to add a bit of color too, but it wilted after a few weeks. A green thumb you did not possess. The beginnings of fall currently appeared outside its trees lost their leaves, brown and crumpled on sidewalks that crunched under heavy boots, or sat neatly in piles for adventurous kids and playful dogs to jump into. Warm spices and hot tea and cozy blankets. These were the mental images that materialized during fall. A slight chill just now hit the air. Not cold enough for a jacket, but no longer warm enough for shorts and tank tops. You considered Bakugou and his quirk and the small details you knew about him, so you picked up a couple of candles with darker scents that reminded you of campfires and smoked wood and damp mountain air. There was one towards the top of the shelf that looked interesting. You stood on your tiptoes to try and reach it, but could just barely touch the label. Damn it, unfair to short people. Just as you jumped up in an attempt to grab the candle, a gruff voice echoed down the aisle, causing your fingers to slip and the candle to flip off the shelf. Shit! You yelped, fumbling with a candle in one hand while you reached out desperately to grab the other one before it hit the floor and shattered. Time stood still and moved furiously quickly as the jar flipped in your hand, your eyes wide in panic. It wouldn't be the end of the world if it broke, but you really hated the idea of an employee having to clean up your clumsy mess. With knees in the floor and both candles now cradled safely against your chest, you breathed out a sigh of relief before hearing footsteps headed your way. You looked up, and above you stood Bakugou, with a cart trailing behind him and a hand on his hip. He must have seen the whole thing. Wait, he caused it by scaring you in the first place. His shit-eating grin told you that your assumption was right. You stood up with both candles in hand, and looked at him with furrowed brows. He didn't have to go yelling for you, but this was Bakugou. Being loud was a secondary personality trait. While still staring at him, you sniffed the candle you'd worked so hard to grab, only to find out it smelled terrible. Your face must have shown your disgust, because you swore Bakugou actually chuckled as you put the candle on a much lower shelf and held on to the one you liked. With your free hand, you took out your phone and opened back up the app. You done? You asked. He just rolled his eyes.
No shit. Let's go. I hate shopping.
You were tempted to look at the clothes he picked out, but it really wasn't any of your business. Hopefully, he paid attention to prices, though, just a little. Even though the clothing choices were fairly bland since this wasn't a proper department store, he managed to find a few things he could tolerate for, hopefully, just one more day. Since his dad worked in fashion, Bakugou grew up with a particular expectation of quality, and that didn't change once he became a pro hero and no longer had to rely on an allowance. The choices here were tolerable, but he really would be an ass for turning his nose up at free clothes he desperately needed. Showering could only do so much. By the time he was done, the cart was filled with approximately 2 t-shirts, 2 black tank tops, 1 pair of sweatpants, 1 pair of workout shorts, a pack of black socks, and a pack of boxer briefs. The shoes he was already wearing were fine. Even though he was here, slacking off on his training wasn't an option. He'd return back home ready to kick the ass of the villain that sent him here. He considered this amount the minimum for the worst-case scenario that he was stuck here for more than a day or two. It was honestly embarrassing having someone else buy this shit for him, but you offered, so he tried to shrug off the blow to his ego on self-sufficiency. The only thing that mitigated his agitation at having, as far as he could tell, no control over the situation at hand was finding you fumbling around like a moron trying not to drop a candle that you didn't even buy because it smelled bad. You were shorter than him, and turning the corner to see you jumping like a moron was too perfect a moment to pass up. If you'd actually dropped the thing, he might have felt slightly guilty, but that pissy look you gave him was mild at best. "Fine by me, I'm starving, so let's hurry up and get back," you said, while leading him to the cash registers. "Do you like Chinese food?" His good mood was brief, replaced quickly with tired indifference as he remembered where he was. Not home. Not in Japan. Not being a hero. This place was foreign and he felt helpless, which pissed him off. He really needed something to punch. Your question brought him back to the fluorescent lights and cold tiles of the store.
"I'll eat it. Don't care what you order, just make mine spicy,"
he answered while analyzing your expression. It was similar to the one you made smelling the candle. "I'll order takeout when we get back. Too tired to cook." As soon as you walked down the cashier's aisle, he piled everything up and crossed his arms impatiently to get this over with. "Oh, almost forgot. Oops." You set the candle you were holding at the tail end of the pile. The cashier looked between the two of you with an odd look, probably because of the translator, but Bakugou's glare sent her back to scanning. You paid, and he grabbed the bags before walking towards the exit. Honestly, he was hungry too, so the sooner he got back to eat, the sooner he could sleep. You yawned while walking to the car. Honestly, it was pretty late to be eating dinner, but you hadn't had much of anything since lunch, and going to bed without either of you eating anything sounded awful. You observed that Bakugou's fashion sense didn't change much since most of the items he picked out were black. You made sure to avert your eyes when the pack of underwear crossed over the conveyor belt. Thinking about whatever underwear he picked out was most definitely not okay. Nope, absolutely not. The drive back home was mostly silent as he stuffed the bag into the back seat with him and made no attempt at conversation. You didn't really know what to say either, so both of you fell into awkwardness. He was surely still pissed about being here, about having you buy him things, about not knowing anything regarding the quirk used on him. At least he let you do this one favor, and maybe he appreciated it, or just enjoyed cackling at your expense when you almost dropped that candle. You were already a bit clumsy, and having a hot guy staying with you for a while probably didn't help either. If it made him crack a rare smile, though, maybe it was worth it? You wouldn't trip up intentionally, but you had a feeling that being flustered about him posed a natural threat to your balance and coordination. As soon as you parked, Bakugou wasted no time in grabbing his things and exiting the car, but at least he slowed down enough to let you walk in pace behind him. He impatiently gestured towards your front door since he left your spare key inside, so you opened the door and let the two of you inside your apartment, locking it behind you. Now that that's out of the way, you set your things down and pulled a takeout menu off the fridge, scanning it to figure out what to order. Bakugou said he didn't care as long as it was spicy, so you paid close attention to the little pepper indicators next to the dish names. Glancing up, you saw Bakugou seated on the couch, the bag of clothes next to him, one hand opening and closing as small sparks flew up from his palm. He stared at the flickers of light as though they held the answers to his problems, or like a realization might ignite along with the firework like flames. Bakugou glanced up from the sparks in his hand when you spoke up from the kitchen. Even though he couldn't understand you, he assumed you were ordering food with your phone precariously balanced on one shoulder and a menu in hand. He hated not knowing. He hated feeling lost. He hated having no answers to this giant fucking problem. If he really was alone here with no other heroes, and so far that seemed likely, then he was screwed. But that definitely didn't mean giving up on finding a way back home. There had to be a way to get back, and he was going to find it. Bakugou never gave up on anything, so he'd be damned if he let this exasperating situation get to him. That's surely what the villain wanted, and Bakugou wouldn't let them have the satisfaction. That, however, did nothing to cure the boredom here at having no hero work to keep him busy. His eyes flickered up once again when you moved out from the kitchen and towards what looked like a small hallway closet. With your arms full of towels, you walked into the bathroom for a minute before coming back out, glancing at him briefly as you walked back into the kitchen and grabbed your phone. He'd observed you for the past 2 days and came to the conclusion that you were weird, but not dangerous. Getting into a physical fight with you, barring you weren't hiding some super strength or you were lying about everyone being quirkless, meant he would win, no contest. Your apartment seemed average enough, if a bit small. He made good money as top pro hero, so his own place back home was at least twice this size despite living alone. Besides that bat you wielded yesterday and kitchen knives, nothing else screamed weapon. You also seemed clumsy, something he could use to his advantage if he needed to. Overall, he concluded that you weren't an immediate threat. "Hey," you called, the phone in your hand translating once more. That robotic voice was annoying, and it occasionally got words wrong, but overall, he could piece things together. "Food should be here soon. I just ordered the spiciest thing they had, so I hope that's okay."
You gonna turn your nose up at it again? Coward.
He mocked, and sure enough, your nose scrunched up again at the mere idea of smelling whatever food he ate.
It's yours, not mine, so no problem.
I also, cleared out some space in that closet for your things so you don't have to keep them in the bag. You pointed to the door you opened earlier. So that's why you removed the towels. "I'm going to change," you said, before disappearing back into your room and closing the door behind him. Bakugou sighed before grabbing the bag of clothes and sorting them into the single shelf you'd emptied for him, keeping the tags on for you to return if he didn't wear them.
"I could be outside with fucking nothing, I guess,"
he mumbled to himself, trying to look at the few positives of the situation. Shelter, food, bathroom, clothes. If he was forced to choose between being homeless and being here, he'd stick to this apartment. Clean clothes sounded pretty good right now, considering he'd worn the same thing for 2 days in a row. On that note, he grabbed what he wanted and headed into the bathroom to shower. When you came out of your room wearing the pajamas you had on earlier, Bakugou was gone.
What?
You looked around before pausing to hear water running in the bathroom. "Bakugou is using my shower right now. Holy shit," you whispered, while trying to keep any and all stray thoughts far away from your rampant imagination. "Nope, none of that. We'll just put those thoughts far away." To keep yourself occupied before the food arrived, you grabbed the novel you were reading yesterday and sat on the couch. The store bag was gone, so you assumed Bakugou put his things in the closet. It wasn't much, but you tried to give him a small amount of available space in your apartment. After about 10 minutes, you heard the bathroom door open and nearly bent the front cover of your book from how hard you gripped it to keep the book from falling right onto the floor. Bakugou walked out from the steamy bathroom wearing a black tank top and sweatpants, the clothes he'd worn for the past 2 days tucked under his arm. The faint scars you saw last night littering his skin wound up to his shoulders, evidence of his battle prowess and resilience. You silently thanked the book for its wondrous ability to hide your face before he caught you staring, or trying not to stare, or something. Luckily, his priority seemed to revolve around being left alone at the moment. You watched from the corner of your eyes as he walked to the kitchen for a glass of water before you heard a knock at the door. Looking up from your book, Bakugou stilled, his shoulders tense as he glanced from the door to you with narrowed eyes. "Food," you said, before getting up from the couch, hoping he would understand that much without the help of your phone. After digging in your purse for some cash, you opened the door to reveal a scrawny teenager holding a plastic takeout bag. "Thanks." With food in hand and less money in your pocket, you closed the door and set the bag on the counter. Holy shit, I'm hungry. Bakugou watched as you sorted through the boxes. The answer to which box belonged to which person became immediately clear when a distinct, spicy smell made your eyes water. Ugh, no thanks. He scoffed and snatched up the box along with a pair of disposable chopsticks before sitting down at your small kitchen table. Instead, you grabbed a fork from your drawer and sat at the opposite side with your phone in the center to pick up any conversation. There was a full minute of silence before Bakugou spoke up.
Okay, stop fucking eating. What's wrong with you?
With fork poised in the air on the way to your mouth, you paused and almost dropped rice into your lap. What'd I do?
Why are you using a fork?
He asked, red eyes darting to the utensil in your hand. You cleared your throat after swallowing the hovering bite. Chopsticks and me don't get along all right. I can never get them to work right, you admitted while avoiding eye contact. Bakugou looked borderline disgusted.
Literal babies in Japan can use chopsticks,
he mocked while easily picking up his own spicy noodles. He really was a brat. You just turned your nose up at him and continued eating. My apartment, my rules. Maybe I'll figure it out soon, but today is not that day. Even though Bakugou thought he had you mostly figured out, just from small interactions and silent observation, the one thing that made his eye twitch was your sass. His friends back home pushed his buttons constantly, almost to the point of blowing their faces off, but you just spat back most things he said or did with vigor, and he couldn't retaliate in the same way. Pushovers always grated on his nerves, but he wasn't sure which annoyed him more, someone who stood up to his attitude or someone who just did what he said, which was usually correct, without question. The remainder of dinner proceeded in dedicated silence. Normally Bakugou wouldn't mind being alone all day, but it was always by choice. Now that he was forced into near isolation with no one to talk to besides you, he considered digging into your own personal history. Not that he cared about your daily life or anything, but there remained the possibility that you knew more than you were letting on. Maybe he could pretend to care long enough for you to slip up on the off chance that you were involved in this scheme.
What boring shit do you do for work?
He asked suddenly. You looked up from finishing off your food with that damn fork, appearing surprised at his question.
You want to know what I do?
He shrugged.
I told you what I did. Isn't it fair for me to ask?
Bakugou knew he was being an asshole, but didn't particularly care to curb his attitude at the moment. You sighed, but told him the rough gist of your job responsibilities and role at the company. None of it sounded unbelievable.
Wow, yeah, that is fucking boring,
he answered with a disinterested tone when you were done. I mean, yeah, but the pay is decent, so I won't complain too much. I've been there a few years, so I guess I'm just kind of going through the motions. With that, you got up to toss away your takeout container, but Bakugou didn't miss your attitude shift. He could never work at an office. Hell, the thought of anything other than hero work made him cringe. It was difficult and strenuous and dangerous, but he loved every minute of it. Most people didn't enjoy that luxury, though, with their own jobs. Maybe you fell into that group. Not like your personal issues were any of his business, really. He also couldn't pry for information if you were in a bad mood, so a different tactic might be in order. While washing the fork in your hand, your mind wandered to Bakugou's questions. You didn't like talking about work much. It surprised you that Bakugou even asked about it at all, but there wasn't much to tell without listing off a growing list of frustrations that he probably didn't care about. Your life fell strictly into a mundane category compared to his. But if you wanted to know more about it, you'd give in. Maybe you could find some common ground. But honestly, you were exhausted and just wanted to read until you fell asleep in your comfy bed. When Bakugou got up after finishing his own food, you went into the bathroom and hummed through your nightly routine of teeth brushing and face washing. It's almost the weekend, you mumbled to yourself, which means I can relax. Oh, shit. What if he's still here? How do I entertain someone who lives a way more exciting life than I do? You asked towards your reflection in the mirror. Of course, it held no answers, but you had one more day to think about that. He might not even be here tomorrow anyway, right? The thought shouldn't have bothered you as much as it did. When you opened the door, Bakugou sat on the couch with a couple of your games in hand. If he kept his attitude in check, you could focus strictly on how ridiculously handsome he was. A dangerous road, you thought to yourself. Don't do or say anything dumb. You grabbed your phone from the counter and stood next to the couch as his crimson eyes watched your every move. I'm going to sleep since I have work tomorrow. I don't mind if you want to play or watch something, just don't keep the volume up too loud. Did you, sleep okay last night? Do you need more blankets or anything? Bakugou shook his head.
It's a couch. I've slept on worse. It's fine.
His answer was curt, but you were too tired to push the subject. If you're sure. Good night. I hope you can make it home soon. Let me know if I can help. I don't mind. With that, you walked into your room and closed the door. Bakugou growled to himself and tossed the games to the side to keep from breaking them. Why were you so fucking nice? He couldn't understand it. What did you get out of helping him? There had to be some hidden agenda. Or maybe he was just a cynical asshole who expected the worst out of people by default until they proved him wrong. Either way, he wasn't about to let his guard down around you, which meant he needed a plan. Tomorrow, if he woke up in this quirkless world again, would be the start of something interesting. Rather than walk straight into the kitchen, you heard Bakugou pad heavily across the floor and slam the bedroom door. No, not the bedroom. Oh god. Is that the ice cream truck? Damn, I want ice cream. Ice cream truck, I swear to god, please leave. Please go away. I'm hungry.
Aren't you married? You shot... phone? Stop? If you wanted to keep up the charade of... Charade? Charade? Charade. Why is that any of your goddamn business? Oh, wait, no, he didn't say goddamn. Oops.
There seemed to be an understanding between showering. God, that's a hard word.